welcome to the King's Report News Hour for the 8th day of Chungi in the 11th month, by the 8th day in the 11th month of the heavenly calendar in the 16th year of Chungi. Got that a little bit wrong, but I finally got it right. Temeodo sitting in for the second king of Chungi, Hyungjimun, and let's take our sojourn around the kingdom and see what is going on right now in Chongpyeong, Tennessee, 55 degrees and partly cloudy. And let's see here. Today, getting up to 71, mostly cloudy and warm. Tonight, mostly cloudy and a low of 51. And then oops, what is this? Okay. Father's hometown of Cheongju, North Pyongan province in North Korea, what is today North Korea. A little bit better. I guess it's a little bit better than it has been, but still dangerously cold, I would say. 14 degrees and clear right now. Partly to mostly cloudy tonight, not as cold late and low of 10 degrees. These are all Fahrenheit degrees. Tomorrow, low clouds, then perhaps some sun with a bit of sleet and freezing rain in the afternoon. High of 33, so a little bit better, but freezing rain and so forth, it's going to be tough for the people there. Northeast Pennsylvania at the Cheongju Palace, 21 and mostly cloudy right now. 30 degrees for a high today, a couple of morning flurries, otherwise mostly cloudy and not as cold. 16 degrees for a low tonight, partly cloudy. And at the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Limestone County, Texas, 68 and mostly cloudy, breezy and humid with periods of clouds and sun, high of 83. Tonight, partly cloudy and breezy, low of 66. Suncheon Palace in Korea, some clouds and 33 right now, clear to partly cloudy, low of 29 tonight. Tomorrow, sunny and high of 52. Gunma Palaces in Japan, clear and 35 and remaining clear through the night, 29 degrees for a low. Sunshine tomorrow, high of 51. Gwangju, Guangdong Province, clear and 64, remaining clear through the night, 54 degrees for a low. Tomorrow, hazy sunshine, high of 70 degrees. Okay, let's go to Father's Word. And let's see where we takes us today. We're in the Pan-Pacific Providence. Right. So here we're in chapter 1, section 1.2. Subhead is developing the seabed. There is unlimited resources are there. Unlimited resources are there. Yeah. You need to know that the sea is quite mysterious, and it has unlimited. It is an unlimited treasure store, treasure chest, or treasure warehouse. Anyway, you get the idea. And then in the next paragraph, he says, "You should like the ocean. You must pioneer it." Yeah, that's the one thing that I really missed in my career in the Unification Church, is I never got to do the Ocean Church because I was here in Korea. We cannot ignore the ocean, which is 3 times, I guess he means an area of land, 3 times. They say that 3/4 of the earth is ocean, and so that works out, right? 3/4 to 1/4, 3 times as much ocean as there is land. So who is going to develop the maritime resources that are in the seabed? They say that there is gold and silver and all kinds of other treasures on land, but the ocean is has 3 times the area, so there must be 3 times the treasure. Okay. Well, the Father's encouraging us to find out more about the seabed because through a number of incidents, we've learned, or been reminded that we know very little about the seabed. Very little of it has actually been mapped, or in detail anyway. For example, when the Malaysian flight what was that, 370 or something? I've forgotten now. But when it disappeared and still has not been found, uh, we learned that there were areas of the Indian Ocean that had never been mapped. So yes, not never been mapped, and of course, had never been sort of explored in terms of their resources. So we will have to. Father encourages us to find out about that and to study it and to pioneer those areas. In other places, Father has talked about how in the future, you know, this is predicated on the idea that human population will continue to increase, where he says that soon there will be no more space on land, and so people will be living on the sea or in the sea. And he talks about submarines, right? Yeah. People living in submarines, where he says, well, if you go down to a certain depth, um, even if there's a storm on the surface of the ocean, you go down a certain depth and you're not affected by the storm. And so people can live in these submarines. They can, when the storm comes, they go down, come back up. When the storm passes, they come back up, and they use they get their everything they need from the surrounding ocean and so forth and so on. I guess there's sort of some kind of process of desalination so that there's drinking water, I suppose. I don't know about that. I guess there's still some kinks to be worked out. Um, but how do nuclear powered submarines, they stay underwater for months and months and months? But I guess they have a way of, hmm, I think I know how, but I'm not sure I want to think too much about it. But where they sort of recycle fresh water, or I don't know if it's fresh, but they recycle water. Okay. I think you know what we're talking about. And maybe it's time to move on to something else here. Okay. Anyway. All right. Yes. All right. And maybe, in the future, there will be some efficient way of preparing the seawater for drinking. All right. Let's see what is going on right now. And well, the this is the week after Christmas, or the post-Christmas week, they say. Of course, not in the Orthodox area, where their Christmas is still to come, but yeah, in sort of the area of the world that is affected by the Roman Church, shall we say, the Roman Catholic Church, and all the Protestant denominations that have sprung from the Roman Catholic Church. This is the post-Christmas week. And in the post-Christmas week, not a whole lot happens, right? People go on vacation. Maybe they go skiing, or the school is out, right? School is out. They might go, I suppose some people go swimming, and they do all sorts of things other than making news. But we'll see what we can dig up here. Um, okay. Well, I tell you, okay, let's see here. Well, right now, one thing that is not happening is not a whole lot of movement toward peace in the Ukraine. Um, Zelensky uh, has come up with something, but he's really not in a position to control negotiations. And here, let's see here. This is a recent one. Zelensky tells Axios he's prepared to call referendum on Trump plan if Russia agrees to cease fire. But basically, he's trying to remain relevant. Uh, and I think Zelensky and Trump are getting ready to meet soon. And Trump is saying that, that Zelensky doesn't really have anything unless he says so. And he's saying that when he meets Zelensky, he's going to see what uh, Zelensky has, but not holding out too much hope that things are going to move forward. Christmas was kind of a self-imposed deadline um, for President Trump, and obviously that has passed. And unfortunately, uh, unless President Trump really makes a difficult decision here, and I think you know what I mean by that, the U.S. is just going to keep on being sort of dragged into this war for another year, another 5 years, another 10 years, another 15 years, and we're going to have ourselves another 20-year war. Now, maybe, in the meantime, if, either Putin or Zelensky is removed from the stage by people who want to go in a different direction, then maybe something can happen. But right now, um, you know, Zelensky and Trump are trying to come up with ways to end the fighting, and Putin is just saying no, no, no. If I have my strategic goals, and I'm going to accomplish them either by diplomacy or by fighting. And if you guys don't want to give it to me by diplomacy, then that's fine. I'll just get them by fighting. So we'll see what's going on, right? We'll see what's going on. And this headline here: Russia surrenders its sovereignty to China. Zelensky citing intelligence. This is actually 16 days old, but others are also saying something similar. That the longer this goes on, really, the more Russia is relying on China to provide it with the financial resources that it needs in order to, continue making the ammunition and the weapons, and also to continue paying the soldiers who are fighting. And apparently, Russia is, because it's sort of running low on its own people, it's recruiting people from other countries. And I think I saw here that they've got now people coming from 25 different countries to fight there in on behalf of Russia as part of the Russian effort. And they're targeting sort of countries they're targeting poor countries quite honestly. And that's not unusual. That's not unusual. Also, remember during the Vietnam War, before the U.S. Army was voluntary. Today it's all voluntary, but up until the 1970s, I guess, shortly after the Vietnam War ended, it was not. And the military would try to recruit. They were recruiting people. If they recruited people, they were doing it in poor neighborhoods. And right now, like Russia is doing that with countries that need the income. Russia is ramping up its military recruits by offering foreign nationals money and pathways to citizenship, according to Ukraine's intelligence agency. And this is when was this published? Yeah, this is a few hours ago. Okay. Well, whenever Ukraine intelligence agency talks about Russia, we have to take this with a significant grain of salt. But it has a ring of truth, I suppose. Russia recruited 150 foreign nationals from 25 countries in December alone. The Kyiv Independent reported Ukraine estimates that 200 more are getting ready to enlist, the head of Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service said. And then also that Foreign Intelligence Service head said that Russia's finding success in new recruits in former Soviet Union countries like Belarus, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan, as well as Cuba and China. Moscow is purposely playing on the economic instability of poor countries and limited legal migration routes turning these factors into a means of control and pressure. That's the Ukrainian guy talking, right? Okay. So yeah, I don't know how much how much credit we can give to this article, but it's probably true. I would say probably true. All right, let's see here. But in terms of Russia surrendering its sovereignty to China, um, China, of course, needs the natural resources that Russia has to offer, especially water. And Lake Baikal is a huge water source. It's one of the major water sources in the world. And China would like to build a pipeline or canal or something to draw water from Lake Baikal to China, especially to northern China, because northern China is a fairly industrialized area, and they have used up their water table, and they've talked about. I think they've already have a canal that brings water from the south of China, from the southern part of China to the northern part, but they would also very much like to have the water of Lake Baikal. And oil, gas, coal, all sorts of resources that Siberia has that China needs. And I've talked before about the territory that China was forced to give up to Russia. That is to say, the Qing dynasty in the 19th century was forced to give up to the Tsarist as Russia. And now, in return for all the help that it's giving to Russia in the war, China would like to have those territories back. For example, Vladivostok. And also, for example, right now, China does not have direct access to, what shall I say, the body of water between Korea and Japan, shall I say? Yeah, I got to be diplomatic too, right? the, the body of water which shall not be named that lies between Japan and the Asian continent. Korea and Japan have different names for that, and you can get in trouble naming it calling it the wrong name. And they're both wrong. Okay. But China does not have direct access because North Korea and Russia have a border there, and it's a very short border. It's only a few miles long, but it's blocking China's direct access. And so, but of course, the reason doesn't have that access is because it was forced to give up that territory that Russia now has on the northern shore of the Tumen River, which is the river that flows into that body of water that shall not be named. uh, so it's becoming more and more possible. I don't want to say likely, but more and more possible that there's going to be some realignment of territorial sovereignty between Russia and China as a result of this war, where China is going to say, you know what, you guys took some of our land back in the 19th century, and we really think that you ought to give it back to us. It's the right thing to do. So Vladivostok would be certainly the largest urban center to be transferred from Russia to China. And that would be an interesting situation because there are a lot of Russians living there, right? I don't know what they feel about that, but some kind of an arrangement like that, maybe a leasing or something like that, and also giving China access to the sea there, so that they can have uh, access to, so the northeastern part of China can have access to the ocean, direct access to the ocean. So all sorts of things are going on, and the longer it goes on, the more likely this kind of thing is going to become. And more people are talking about Russia becoming a kind of a client state of China, at least in terms of Siberia, at least in terms of Russia that is east of the Urals, which is a pretty big chunk of land. And historically, one of Russia's advantages, one of its main advantages, is the fact that it has such a vast territory, so that when Napoleon invaded, when Hitler invaded, they could always retreat back into their hinterland because they had such a huge land area. But we'll see how all of this changes the map there. But I think we can map makers should be ready to republish their world maps in the next few years, I suspect. Yeah. All right. And of course, Father talking about the seabed having gold, silver, and all sorts of other treasures. And Siberia also, of course, has all sorts of treasures, including gold. Yes, including gold and silver. And for China right now, gold is very important because they're stacking gold in hopes of somehow uh, decoupling themselves, shall we say, from the dollar system, because really they really cannot attack Taiwan or do other nasty stuff as long as they are dependent on the dollar system. So they would like to get away from that. So that's another thing that they want to get from Siberia. Right. Right. I think I mentioned the unit, right? Just briefly. The unit is the very unimaginative name that the BRICS countries are giving their new sort of a common currency, shall we say? I don't know if it's a currency, but I think it's kind of like I think mostly it's an accounting thing, I believe, kind of like special drawing rights are for the IMF. But it's going to be um, a basket of currencies. 60% is going to be a basket of the BRICS country currencies, their local currencies. So the Chinese yuan, the Russian ruble, and the others, right? The Indian rupee and so forth, South Africa. And then, so that's 60%, and then 40% it's going to be backed by gold. So that may be the reason that China is Chinese central bank is buying up so much gold recently, and instead of purchasing or rolling over the U.S. treasuries that it has as they mature. I'm still skeptical that all this BRICS thing is going to work out, uh, especially when they talk about gold, because gold has to be stored, it has to be audited regularly, it has to be verified, and of course it's very difficult to transport it. When in what was it, late 60s or early 70s, when France decided it wanted its gold, because the nation's gold was basically all sort of stored in New York. And then, as they would settle, they wouldn't actually physically move the gold. They would just say, okay, well, maybe they would move it from one vault to another in a basement in a building in New York. But then France decided that they wanted to actually get their gold and take it back to France. And they had to actually send a warship. They sent a warship because gold is transporting a lot of gold, tons and tons of gold, is a pretty dangerous operation. The old Western movies, right, where there's a stagecoach, right? The stagecoach is carrying the payroll for the miners. And of course, in those days, it was all cash. And the bad guys know this, and so they attack the stagecoach and steal it. So that's the kind of security risk that you run when you are transporting gold any kind of distance across the surface of the earth. So then, in this case too, BRICS are going to say, okay, where are we going to store the gold, right? Is China going to store it all? Okay, so we're going to trust China. We're going to trust the Chinese Communist Party? How does India feel about that? India and China are trying to make nice right now because they're trying to work together to bring down the United States dollar, but I just wonder how deep that friendship really is. All right, so maybe they have distributed storage. So China keeps some, India keeps some, maybe Saudi Arabia keeps some, or South Africa keeps some. Uh, Brazil, maybe, yeah, Brazil has gold mines. Maybe Brazil keeps some. But then you have to sort of audit, make sure that they're actually keeping it, they're not spending it. So there have to be regular audits. So I think they're still trying to think this thing through. There's a lot of problems, there are a lot of issues when you're trying to back a currency with gold. And remember, gold is what got us into this mess in the first place, right? And so gold is probably not the way to go, but they want to try. They want to try. And of course, the 60% is being is backed by their own currencies. Um, hmm, how stable are those currencies? That's the question, right? So if they're not stable, then if let's say the Indian rupee gets into trouble, then the whole BRICS sort of the unit, as they call it, the whole BRICS unit then is affected by that trouble. So we'll still have to see, and I'm still quite skeptical as to how far this is going to go. I understand that they want to decouple from the dollar for a number of reasons. One is that the Trump administration, or I guess Biden, I guess it was, wasn't it? The Biden administration demonstrated that when push comes to shove, and a country does something that the U.S. does not like, then that country's uh, dollar assets will be frozen. You can bet on that. So China is telling itself, hey, if we invade Taiwan, our assets will be frozen. There's a 100% chance, and they're right. They're right. It will be frozen. So they want to get away from the dollar. I understand that. And another reason, of course, is that um, uh, the value of the dollar is affected by how many dollars are actually in circulation. And uh, if there aren't enough dollars in circulation, then the price of the dollar goes up relative to other currencies, and it becomes more expensive for people to get the dollars that they need. And when I say get the dollars that they need, a lot of corporations, a lot of countries have taken out loans that are in dollars. For example, if a South Korean company wants a loan, it may go to a bank in Singapore. And the bank in Singapore will say, okay, yes, we'll lend you the money, but we're not going to give it to you in Korean currency. We're not going to give it to you in Singaporean currency. We're going to give you the loan in dollars. The South Korean company says, okay, yeah, that's fine. The dollar is a stable currency, and so we can deal with that. But then when it comes time to pay back the loan or pay interest on the loan, that South Korean company has to pay it back in dollars. So if they are, if their revenue is in, let's say the revenue is in Korean won, let's say most of the revenue comes from domestically in Korea, then they have to go to the foreign exchange market to purchase dollars in order to pay back the loan in Singapore. But if there aren't enough dollars on the exchange, then the price of the dollar in Korean won goes sky high, and it's more difficult to pay back that loan. And by the way, this is exactly what's happening in Korea right now, where the value of the dollar, shall I say, or the price of the dollar, same thing, I guess, on the foreign exchange markets is at a multi-year high right now, And so the government actually earlier this week, I guess was it late last week, or earlier this week? I guess it was earlier this week, sort of pressured the National Pension Fund to do something that would sort of release some of the dollars that they were holding into the market, so that this would sort of force the value of the dollar down a bit. Otherwise, especially year end, I'm sure there are a lot of loans that are due at the year end, and they're having trouble because they can't afford to purchase the dollars that they need. so, so there are many reasons that countries would like to get away from the dollar. Uh, the dollar, especially since 1971, since the President Nixon closed the gold window, and this whole thing of uh, floating exchange rates began. It's been 50 years now, 50 plus years, and basically that system is showing signs of um, having outlived its value, or outlived its purpose, and something new just has to come along. So the BRICS unit thing, I think, is just a kind of a stopgap thing that they're going to do while they're trying to come up with something else. But we'll see what they actually come up with. But it is a complicated situation that involves pretty much all countries of the earth, and uh, we'll see how it goes. China would like for their currency to replace the dollar, but that's not going to happen anytime soon, because mainly is because China still has a lot of capital controls. In other words, it's difficult to get dollars out of China, or money. They're not dollars, but the Chinese currency it's difficult to get to. If you have Chinese currency and you want to ship it to, well, okay, let's say that bank loan in Singapore was taken out in Chinese currency. All right. Then that Korean company has to get Chinese currency to pay back the loan. But that's difficult too, because there are capital controls in China which limit the amount of yuan that can come out of China. And you'd say, okay, well then China can get rid of the capital controls, but no, they won't. They can't really do that, because if they do that, then all the billionaires in China, right, will move their assets out of China, because they're afraid that the Chinese Communist Party is going to confiscate them if they keep them in China, and they have a good reason to fear that. So China cannot remove the capital controls. And one good thing about the U.S. dollar is that there are very few, if any, there are some capital controls, but very few capital controls. It's um, and also the dollar is pretty much honored anywhere in the world, right? You can have $100 bill in your wallet, or a couple of $100 bills in your wallet, and you're pretty good anywhere you go in the world. People are going to accept it. People are going to say, okay, yeah, I recognize that, and it has value, and I'm going to give you, whatever it is that you need, whether it's a night in a hotel or a meal or whatever, something like that. Just an aside, but I guess I've told this story before, but in 1989, December 1989, I was in Moscow, and the economy then, it was still, the Soviet Union, but the economy had collapsed. And the local currency, the ruble, was worth basically nothing. I tried to pay for a taxi ride in rubles, and the taxi rider refused, because foolishly I had changed my dollars, or some of my dollars, into rubles at the airport, just like I do wherever I go. That's what you do, right? You go to a country, you buy some of their local currency, and you spend the local currency. Well, did not work out that way in Moscow in December of 1989. Taxi driver held up a stack of rubles like this. He says, "I've got rubles. I need dollars." But $20 actually would buy you basically, well, we went to this guy and I, we were traveling together. We went to a restaurant. There was a long line outside the restaurant. But then the guy at the door, I guess the bouncer, it was not a nightclub or anything, but there was a guy at the door, all right? He sees us, he sees that we're foreigners, that we're not Russian, and he asks us what we're doing there, and we showed him a $20 bill. And he says, "Oh, okay, 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 okay." And he takes us in, all right? $20 bill was good enough to get us in there. And the waiter sees our $20 bill and he sits us down at this large table. We're the only ones at the table. And the table is already stacked. I mean, it is stacked with food this high. It is stacked with food this high, including, caviar and all sorts of meats and everything else, everything like that. And he says to us, "Eat as much as you want." You know, um, and yeah, it was quite an experience. Okay, it was actually a very sad experience because the Moscow people were quite desperate, and I could see there that there were basically just three industries that were thriving: drugs, gambling, and prostitution. Those were the only three industries that were making any money at all. It was actually quite sad what was going on there at that time. And there's no guarantee that something like that will not happen. That's what happens when a currency collapses. So anyway, people want to have something that replaces the dollar, and sort of the BRICS unit is kind of a stopgap measure, I suspect. Kind of well, we have to have something. We cannot keep on going the way we are. So let's do this and try this and see if it works. That kind of a thing. I don't think it's going to work. At least not in a very maybe in the no, I don't know, even a short because the whole thing is the gold, right? Where are you going to put the gold? Where are you going to put the gold? China says China. We actually don't know how much gold China has. Well, you can find figures online, but that's not the real figure. They're not disclosing the total amount of gold that they have because they're mining gold. You know how much gold, or the people who are have this information, they know how much gold China has purchased um, and brought to China. That's pretty transparent. But China also mines its own gold inside China, and that is something that China is not reporting. So how much gold does China actually have? We don't know. And the other BRICS countries, they're going to have to take China's word for it. How much gold does India have? How much gold does Brazil have? And if they tell you, are you going to trust them? Are you going to believe them? You want to audit them. You think China's going to allow India to come in and audit their gold? No, that's not going to happen. And if they do go in and audit the gold, and China shows them some yellow bricks, right? How do they know that there's actually gold? It has the right weight. No, 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 that's not enough. No. And there are machines that will sort of do that, but we'll see. But there could be, there still could be something else other than gold in that brick, and the machine cannot. It can analyze one spot that where its microwave is targeting, but it cannot tell you that the entire brick is pure gold or 99.99% of gold or anything like that. So gold is a problem. So I don't think that the BRICS unit is really going to work. That's my opinion. My uninformed opinion, perhaps, but just thinking it through. Uh, the real world. How are you going to do this? How are you going to do this? Okay. All right, let's see here. I guess we can do this as a kind of a public service announcement about marijuana and the effects of marijuana on teens. And this is something good. I hope that none of our teens are regularly using marijuana, but you might be surprised. You might be surprised. Okay. Teens don't have to use marijuana that often for it to have a negative effect on their lives, according to a new study. Even using marijuana once or twice a month is linked with worse school performance and more emotional turmoil among teenagers, researchers reported Tuesday in the Journal of Pediatrics. And more frequent use brings even more emotional and academic problems, researchers found. One study found that any amount of cannabis use at all may put kids at risk of falling behind in school, and the kids using most often may have the greatest risk, said the lead researcher, Dr. Ryan Sultan, an assistant professor of clinical psychiatry at Columbia University. A few, quote, harmless, unquote, joints can snowball into real academic consequences, he said in a news release. Teens using it regularly often struggle to focus, miss school, and may lose interest in their future plans. About 1 in 5 high school students use cannabis, and about 6% of high school seniors use it daily. Wow, a rate that has increased in the past decade, researchers said in background notes. Particularly concerning is the fact that today's cannabis contains 2 to 3 times as much THC as it did in the past. THC is the compound that produces intoxication. This potent weed could have a devastating impact on teenage brains, which are still developing crucial neural connections, researchers said. Using cannabis even casually during these critical growth periods interferes with those processes and can derail normal development. Dr. Tim Becker, a researcher and child and adolescent psychiatrist at Will Cornell Medicine in White Plains, New York, said in a news release. For the new study, researchers analyzed data from a survey of more than 160,000 8th, 10th, and 12th graders conducted from 2018 through 2022. More than a quarter reported they had used weed at some time. Well, I guess it's encouraging that almost 3/4 have said that they have not used weed at any time. I hope that they can keep that standard. Among them have said they aren't currently using it. 18% said they use it monthly, 14% weekly, and 18% nearly every day. Those teens who said they use weed monthly were more than twice as likely to skip classes and have bad grades as non-users. Monthly users were also twice as likely, I think they mean, twice as likely to get into fights, 72% more likely to seek danger, 40% more likely to prefer risk-seeking friends, 42% more likely to have difficulty experiencing joy and pleasure, 32% to have a profound sense of emptiness and despair, results showed. The results of these negative behaviors and feelings rose as teens used cannabis more frequently, researchers found. For example, nearly daily users were nearly 4 times as likely to have bad grades or skip classes and activities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, they're kind of repeating themselves now. In Korea, cannabis is illegal, and I think there's a jail term associated with it. And not only that, but it is illegal for Korean citizens to smoke marijuana even when they are outside of Korea. If they go to America and smoke marijuana there, and somehow it gets reported back to Korean authorities, then those Koreans often get in trouble. And even actually at the airports, there are signs, excuse me here. As Koreans are leaving the country, there are signs where it says it is illegal for Korean citizens to use uh, marijuana or hashish, even if it is even when you are outside of Korea. So be forewarned. So does that mean that there's no marijuana here? I'm sure that's not the case. Uh, but when it is discovered, it creates creates a great deal of social upheaval, shall we say, in the media. People who are caught are of course they have to they have to do the perp walk, the walk of shame, and so forth. All right, let's see here. Maybe we can look at some stories on Newsmax. Huh. So President Donald Trump ahead of an expected weekend meeting with Zelensky told Politico, he doesn't have anything until I approve it. So we'll see what he's got. And we'll see what that is. And Blaine Holt to Newsmax, Zelensky's final fork in the road. Maybe, but he seems to have a knack for surviving. The planned Sunday meeting at Mar-a-Lago represents Kyiv's final chance for a negotiated end to the war, retired Air Force Brigadier General Blaine Holt said Friday. President Donald Trump is expected to demand concrete movement on territory and final status. Holt appeared on Newsmax's Carl Higbee Frontline as reports emerged that Trump and Zelensky are preparing to meet Sunday. And Zelensky said the meeting is intended to finalize as many issues as possible before the new year, adding that a lot can be decided before the new year. Yeah, it is a great sign because they wouldn't actually be allowing the meeting between Zelensky and President Trump if there wasn't a real reason to believe that substantive success couldn't be had and had soon. Yeah, I think they meant could be had. Yeah. Holt framed the meeting as a narrowing window for Zelensky, with Trump arguing that European leaders have slowed prior. What happened here? Uh, Slowed prior diplomatic efforts. And so, honestly, I think this is President Zelensky's last chance in the batter's box with President Trump because it's really been the European leaders that have been kind of an impediment to all of the Trump diplomacy, he said. And the European leaders have been pretty irresponsible, in my opinion, because on the one hand, they want to keep U.S. involved in the Ukraine situation, and they don't want the Ukraine war to end. Apparently, they want to keep it going for whatever reason. Holt cited recent public comments from European officials as an example of what he described as counterproductive positioning. In fact, you've got Kaja Kallas saying we shouldn't even be talking to the Russians right now, which is nothing but pure escalation, Holt said. Kallas is the European Union's top foreign policy official. And that's probably, a pretty strong school of opinion within the European Union. They want this war to continue. They want to grind down Russia. They want to grind down the United States. And of course, it's also grinding down the European Union. And really, China is the one that is winning this war right now. Holt also pointed to developments involving Russia and Ukraine that he said suggested behind the scenes coordination is already underway. Also good that Kirill Dmitriev showed up in Miami right after the Ukrainians left That means they're actually coordinating positions, Holt said about the Kremlin envoy. According to Holt, the substance of an agreement will hinge on territory and the long-range status of the conflict. It's really going to be about territory, and it's going to be about final status, he said. It's going to be a frozen conflict, or is it going to be a frozen conflict, or is it going to be an ended war with new borders drawn? The White House has not formally confirmed the Mar-a-Lago meeting. However, Trump acknowledged that plans to meet with Zelensky during an interview with Politico published Friday. I think it's going to be good for. I think it's going to go good with him, Trump said in the interview. He added that Zelensky doesn't have anything until I approve it. The meeting would come as the war sparked by Russia's invasion of Ukraine approaches its fourth year, with pressure mounting on Ukraine and its backers to define an endgame as battlefield lines harden and diplomatic options narrow. Yes. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But really, I'm sure President Trump realizes that the United States really cannot get into another 20-year war. And this thing has got to end. Got to end. Right? So we'll see what happens there. Also, Kurt Volker is saying that Russia wants all of Ukraine, not peace. We'll see. So this is the former U.S. ambassador to NATO. And he's saying that Putin has no intention of agreeing to a genuine peace deal with Ukraine. And that may be true. He said that these renewed diplomatic efforts to end the war in Ukraine are unlikely to produce a lasting peace because Putin remains unwilling to compromise on his core objectives. Could be true, could be true. So if that's the case, then what is President Trump going to do? In that case, he has a couple of options, but none of the options are at all very good. One option, okay, would be to go in and destroy Russia. But that would be nuclear war, and Russia would retaliate, and everything is going. So that's off the table. The other option is to just cut Ukraine off and say, hey, we've done as much as we can, and I'm sorry, but we got to go. And that's the option that I've been recommending. Or I guess I've been saying that President Trump will be faced with, just because of a process of elimination. A third option is to just keep things going, keep it going as it is now. 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And that's not really an option either. I don't think President Trump is going to do that. So really, just the option to cut and run is from the point of view of the United States, from the national interest of the United States, it is the least bad of the options. Of course, Trump will get a lot of static from European leaders and maybe other leaders as well, other countries as well. But at some point, you just have to say, hey, you know what? We need to deal with China. We can't. We a few decades ago, we lost the ability to conduct two wars at once. And we just have to set our priorities according to our own national interests. And right now, priority number one is China. And, Russia will probably swallow Ukraine. And we'll come back and we'll help you out later. But now we got to go. And that's a tough decision for any politician to make. But fortunately, President Trump isn't this for political power or political prestige. We'll see what he does. He may feel that he has to sort of keep the thing going until after the midterm elections. so that the midterm elections are not affected by the negative press that would come as a result of this kind of thing. But pretty soon, I think he's going to have to make that decision. And I know people in Ukraine don't want that. Don't blame them, but there are you have to set options, set priorities. You have to set priorities. All right, let's see here. What have we got going here? Okay, let's see here. Putin fired general dies suddenly on Christmas. Well, no, it's not their Christmas because their Christmas hasn't happened yet, but on the Roman Christmas, I guess you can say. And the whole Epstein thing. Pentagon again misses a clean audit. Yes, it's been years, several years in a row. The Pentagon has failed its audit, not able to account for all the money that it supposedly received. Trump tariffs net $236 billion in revenue year to date. Pastor Lucas Miles, Christian revival is surging. Interesting. And Democrat Dick Morris, well, I would say he's not a Democrat. He claims to be a Republican now. He used to be a Democrat. Dems shifting attacks. Trump keeps winning. Okay. Dick Morris. No matter how much he tries to support President Trump, people keep thinking of him as a Clinton supporter, which he was for a long time. And let's see, Trump delayed the Nigeria strike for a day so that it could be a Christmas present to ISIS. Right? That's classic Trump for you. Okay. Morgan Murphy, Trump showing leadership and tenacity. More to come in Nigeria, according to Hegseth, so forth. Somaliland, yeah. So Israel has recognized this new country called Somaliland, but the U.S. not yet. 5 ways Trump increased GDP growth rate 79%. And as I think I mentioned yesterday, a lot of this is the artificial intelligence capital investment, apparently. Let's see what this guy says. What is it? One, enacting a sweeping tax and budget bill, okay, raising tariffs, rolling back regulations, lowering energy prices, and reducing interest rates. Well, maybe so. Reducing interest rates. This is the third quarter. And by the way, this is going to get, it's going to be changed, right? So this is the initial estimate. People are getting excited by the initial estimate, but the way the GDP works is that they put out a number. For example, they put this number out right in December, right? I guess it should have come out in November. So this is one of the statistics that was delayed by the shutdown. So normally it would have come out at the end of October. End of November. And then end of December, it would be changed. It would be adjusted again. And then January is when the third quarter GDP gets officially, it's officially announced then. So this number is going to change over the next couple of months. So it's not really not something to really get so excited about. We're looking at Breitbart now. Japan approves record defense spending that aims to deter China aggression. Okay. Poland scrambles jets on Christmas Day after detecting Russia recon plane over the Baltic Sea, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. All right, gotta go. So I will see you all on Monday. And so I guess wherever you are, I guess you're probably just like the rest of the world, taking it easy, waiting for the clock to tick down to New Year's, the Gregorian New Year. So God bless, Godspeed. May His kingdom come quickly.